So welcome, I'm Dr. Christine Korol, and I'm here today with...
I'm Larissa Vishniakoff. I'm owner and physical therapist at Reformative Physio and Pilates in Vancouver.
And I'm a big fan. Most of my patients know Larissa because I refer so many people to her. And for a lot of it, it's about when I'm treating panic disorder in particular, I often teach people how to breathe and how not to overbreathe, which can make you feel more anxious if you're hyperventilating and there's too much oxygen in the bloodstream. But sometimes when I do this with people, I notice I can't teach them how to belly breathe, and I sort of reach the limits of my skill. So I often send them over to Larissa for help. But I'm seeing more and more of this with the lockdown for COVID-19 and people doing more remote work and sitting in front of their computers. So I thought it'd be really helpful to chat today about some of the things that we're doing differently that might be making us feel more anxious.
Definitely.
So Larissa and I were chatting a little bit about that before. So in your mind, like, what are some of the things that you're seeing that are increasing anxiety? I think there's a lot of physical things we're doing differently that might be actually contributing to what we think is anxiety, but it's really how we're sitting at our computer.
Definitely. I mean, posture plays an important role in how much air we can even take into our lungs and how much the diaphragm can contract and relax. So if we're sitting in poor postures, our neck is forward, our shoulders are rounded, think of how much we're tightening up the front of our body. And that includes the front of our lungs as well. Our lungs are three-dimensional and expand in all directions, and they go as high as above our collarbones and all the way down to our lower back. But people don't think of them as these big balloon structures, and often we breathe very shallowly or maybe just centered kind of more in this chest region. When we are sitting for a prolonged period of time and our hip flexors are really active and contracted, we also can't get a great distension or movement of our diaphragm. So the ability to take deeper breaths in and out are really restricted as well. So we really want to improve people's ability to breathe and get better expansion and oxygenation to their tissues. We want to think about how that posture is playing a role, how to put in movement breaks that maybe aren't naturally happening in people's schedules right now because you're not motivated by your desk worker beside you getting up to get a glass of water, or everybody taking a lunch break, or whatever it may be. And so we can get carried away in these Zoom meetings and working on our desks all day and forget about the importance of just a little bit of regular movement. And with that being said, more importantly, how the breath encourages that movement throughout our body.
Right. You know, one of the things that I see too when I'm working with people and I'm trying to get them to focus on opening up a little bit more is that they can be stuck. You know, that I see that they're continuing to breathe from the chest and not from the belly. Do you have any good tips on how to open up? And you know, often I don't notice that I'm kind of hunching forward and my neck is forward when I'm at the computer working until it's kind of late too. So
yeah. Definitely. So tips to try to think about trying to breathe more holistically through your body is placing your hands on the area of your body where you may not be even noticing whether you're getting air or not. So I often tell somebody to put a hand quite high, right at the top of their lungs there, and then a hand into their belly, and really just fill both hands. Naturally, we should be filling the bottom hand first, and like a water pitcher or a balloon, we fill all the way up to the top of that. And then as we exhale, we should exhale with the top emptying first, all the way to the last morsels of air coming out of our lower hand into our lower lungs and belly. So just giving that awareness of feeling that ebb and flow of how your breath should move. And then once you have that verticality of your breath, we can start thinking about the lateral expansion, more that accordion expansion of your ribs and the back of your spine, also getting some air into it as well. Because if we're rounded like this all day long, we may feel very compressed, but we may not be getting air around the whole circumference of our body. So hands and tactile feedback, as well as just filling a little bit more than normal, can be great ways to increase that awareness.
That's something I didn't know until I met you, is that actually can fill up from the side too, and you're basically expanding your whole rib cage. Definitely. I think we just think about filling our chest, but it's all around.
Exactly. I like to tell people that the ribs, especially some of the middle ones, they actually should move like a bucket handle, so that swinging up and out motion. So that's why sometimes I encourage breath when we're restricted in certain types of mobility. So if we haven't been extending very much, we've just been flexing, it's really nice to use an inhale to assist that bucket handle or that outward and upward swing of the ribs to help assist our spine to get more movement too. So breath can be helpful for mobility, and mobility can be helpful for breath, and vice versa.
Yeah, I didn't know ribs moved.
Yeah, they're not stiff. They're actually, it's a great area, and majority of our rotation that comes through our spine comes from our thoracic spine, so our rib cage area too. And so that's why it's really important to make sure rotation is part of your everyday movement patterns too. A lot of times right now we're just thinking in this plane of motion. Maybe we pivot our desks a little bit this way, but how often are we actually twisting our spines and getting that ringing effect to happen? And that will really help that large part of our vertebrae move a little bit more. And as we've talked about in the past too, what is also in that area of your body is your digestive tract comes down into your thoracic spine. So a lot of people's digestive issues that they're having right now, whether it be bloating, feeling lack of appetite, feeling more strain or stress, maybe they're constipated, whatever it may be, that can also be from a lack of mobility, not only in your digestion, but in the ribs and the lungs and the diaphragm around those organs too. And so it's important that we use mobility of our vertebrae in our bodies to help mobility of our digestive tract too.
Well, and it can be really easy to blame anxiety for all these aches and pains and discomfort, but sometimes it's just what we're doing.
Yes.
Is there anything you noticed about what changes in somebody's posture as the result of anxiety? I know we have changes in posture that are the results of different tasks that we're doing now, or the different ways that we're working, but can anxiety change how we hold ourselves, or any aches and pains that you notice?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends how that anxiety is starting to present in our bodies. If we're at the state where we're very in that fight or flight mode and we're more in the defense, we often get more of that stiffness in our chest, which is why probably people think my ribs and sternum don't move at all. And they're really geared up and their nervous system is ramped up, their heart rate's up. They may even be holding tension in their body without even knowing it. So that type of anxiety will present more as a stiffness or tension or defense, like a shield is in your way there. So that we need to work on trying to cue them for more softening, finding back those longer, fuller inhales and exhales, letting the vagus nerve kind of bring everything back to a normalized state so that there's not too much overstimulus of that outward or inward stress response on the body. But in contrast, sometimes people are so overly stressed, so overly stimulated that they're just lethargic, they're depressed, they almost feel faint or just no energy left, as a lot of us feel right now. I have nothing left to give, and yet I didn't do anything today. Why am I so tired, right? So that state alone can start to present with more rounded shoulders, more closing off our bodies. And so that physical presentation too, and that depression and that fatigue can lead to a lot of compression on structures that we often see in those desk positions too. So taking the time to then open or increase our heart rate, increase our blood flow to re-stimulate a little bit more of a quicker response in our circulation, instead of maybe just the calming effect. Sometimes we actually need to stimulate to rebalance. And it's always, just like everything in life, is always about rebalancing. We shouldn't stay much in that fight or flight or high stress and anxiety response, nor should we stay in that too much lethargic rest and digest or just calm response. We always want to try to regulate that so our bodies can act and be ready to react with whatever comes our way.
One of the things you mentioned, the vagus nerve, and I've been doing some reading lately, and one of the things that we teach for panic disorder is controlled breathing, or how to use your diaphragm when you breathe, and to slowly breathe so you don't have too much oxygen in your bloodstream, which can make you feel quite anxious. And we used to think it was just helping people not overbreathe that was really helpful in calming them down, but it also seems to have an impact on the vagus nerve and calming the autonomic system. So I read this stuff and I kind of understand a little bit of it. That's not my background, but I wonder if you can explain a little bit more about what is the vagus nerve and what kind of breathing and why it seems to help calm it down so much.
And I think this is importantly correlation between our professions and why we work so well together, is that understanding what happens in our nervous systems and in our brain and cognitive function also impacts what happens on a physical level too. So vagus nerve is a great example of that, where it's responsible for a lot of unconscious or subconscious behavior, as well as a lot of our voluntary behavior. We can regulate.
More like habits, or
habits as well. So habits can be formed by tracts overfiring through the vagus nerve, for example, as well as a lot of our autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
Sometimes we have to habit retrain that unconscious or subconscious reactions too. So the vagus nerve is one of our cranial nerves. It comes out of our brainstem and it innervates a plethora of viscera and organs in our body, everything from in our face and on our throat, all the way into our digestive tract and into our trachea and into our heart. So it's really important that we realize that it's such an important nerve, and it can be overstimulated, like you just alluded to, where it's working so hard to combat the physical stressors or emotional or mental stressors that it gets over fatigued, and we can get to that point of feeling like almost depressed or feeling like we don't have anything left to give. But it can also feel like we need to balance that ability to stimulate other parts of it so that we can re-wake up the regulation between its parasympathetic and sympathetic functions. So for example, those you just said, those calming long breaths, more importantly, filling fully and then exhaling fully. But the most important thing is without effort, because this nerve, just like all the other autonomic nervous system nerves, they work without us thinking about it. So we just want to effortlessly exhale that air out, and that'll help re-regulate that overstimulus that can happen when we're stuck in a really heightened physical stress or emotional stress state. And that vagus nerve really react to that nicely.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's letting the brain know nothing's trying to eat me.
Yes.
Nothing's chasing me.
Exactly. Our reptilian brains are thinking that it's fear. There's something chasing me, that stress or survival mode. And yes, we may have similar reactions in our body, but yes, nothing is chasing us. We're still alive and well, and we need to get back into our bodies and just use our breath to find re-regulation.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I'm hearing a lot of, and people are feeling worse, and I'm not convinced it's all psychological, but just like talking about how tired they are, how fatigued they are, achy at the end of the day. And that can certainly be a symptom of depression, or some of the fatigue. People feel fatigue when they have generalized anxiety disorder. But I think with all the changes, there's some physical things that we could do to help increase our energy levels. So I'm curious about your thoughts about what could be leading to the fatigue or aches and pains that people are having right now.
Mm-hmm. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, that our tissues need oxygen, we need blood flow, and so thus breathing is something that I really impart most importantly with my clients. It's the first principle of Pilates, which is what we study a lot of, but really I always tell patients it's the first principle of life. You wouldn't be here if you couldn't breathe. And even though it does happen involuntary, sometimes we can use a voluntary pathway to get there. So trying to re-regulate that breath is important, but the reason why I always bring that attention back is because achiness as a symptom is a hallmark sign that there's a lack of circulation and thus oxygen into those tissues. So if you're feeling those achy shoulders, lower back, jaw, whatever it may be, your body is sending you signals that you're not getting enough circulation and, importantly, oxygen to those areas. So we can then, it may be because you're compressing them, because you're in poor postures, so that can fatigue everything. If you think about like squeezing your fist really hard and holding that, eventually you're going to start to feel, oh, I'm losing feeling. I'm not feeling like I'm getting much blood circulation to the area. So imagine doing the same thing, basically like this, for 5, 6, however many hours at a time consistently, and all that compression and lack of circulation that is just imparting not enough movement into your body. So achiness is really a sign you got to get up and move.
Or even like I'm imagining that you've been doing a lot of telehealth too, and you get to see people's setups, and often our setups at home aren't ideal. Like at work, we might have a task chair that we can raise to the right height or adjust a few things, or we're usually working on a proper computer. But when we're working on a laptop, that causes other problems. Or so I'm wondering if you're noticing that that's been really nice to see how people are set up and
I think
it's been like for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we've obviously pivoted our company and allowed telehealth and got that set up as soon as possible. And with those virtual visits, now all of a sudden I get to see my clients in their homes, in their natural habitat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the way people, of course, have created some very inventive and creative ways of setting up their desks or making their work environment work for them. But a lot of times it's not facilitating their quality of health and movement and support, and especially of areas of injuries that we've been working on for months
Right.
before this. So to not take that step back, I've probably spent a lot of time actually doing a lot of ergonomic assessment and looking at people's desks, and it's so great because now I get to be that visual in the home, and I can't do that from the office. So that's a huge advantage to this virtual platform right now. And then I can also get to see them do their exercises with the equipment and space that they're using at home versus the nice, beautiful studio and gym space we have at the clinic.
Right.
That can be a whole other world of creative ways that patients have taken your exercises and then created a different story to them at home. So being able to be like, I don't think that was exactly what we taught you, and no wonder it's not serving you right now. Now I get the opportunity to see them and give them some proper feedback right directly to how they're doing them in their home environment.
Well, and speaking of home exercise, one of the things that psychologists prescribe to their patients is increasing their physical activity and working out. It's really helpful for depression and burning off stress. But a lot of the people that I'm working with are complaining that it's really hard for them without their gym. And especially if they're living in a small Vancouver apartment, there isn't that space to really work out, or they're trying different things. So I wonder if you have any home exercise tips.
Definitely. Yeah, well, one thing we did almost immediately as well is open up our retail space so that people could still pick up the equipment that we sell to our clients. So every Friday we have a safe distancing pickup, and you can call in or email in your order. We've got foam rollers and bands and balls to release areas and all sorts of things. So you can be very creative with your home workout space, and you don't need a Pilates reformer or a squat rack or a spin bike or whatever it may be. You can actually do a lot with what you have, and sometimes keeping it simple is actually better. So a lot of exercises I can adapt with a few small pieces of equipment. Some of my favorites are just either a small or a larger stability ball to add a little bit of core challenge, and you could do a plethora of things with it. A foam roller, which you can use to release things, but also to lie on and do some core stability work too. And then some bands. And you can move the band at a whole bunch of different heights with even just a door anchor as well to change the angle of load depending on if you're using your arms or legs or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of creativity that can be had by a few small pieces of equipment. And really, I mean, I've always had this in my home, these few pieces of equipment, and it's been able to allow me to do home workouts even before this situation happened. So I'm trying to encourage my patients and give them some fresh ideas on that. And with that being said, also with them trying new workouts for the first time on all these platforms right now, which is a great thing to have access to it, their bodies may not be ready for it all of a sudden, these new loads.
Right.
So there's a lot of information that is out there right now, and people may think, oh, I should just try this, but you may be sitting all day and then all of a sudden you jump right into a workout. That's probably the best thing to do, right?
Well,
so
and you're used to one kind of workout, switching to another workout. I mean, there'd be some generalizability in fitness, but it's different movement. So
Exactly. So I always err on not telling somebody to stop doing a workout because it's bothering them perhaps, but there's so many things that we can do to modify or create some variations to their workouts and still enjoy their favorite yoga instructor online, but just we can then modify the poses that suit that person's physical needs and any restrictions or any aches or pains so that they can stay healthy, stay happy, and keep moving still from the safety of their home.
That's great. Is there anything that you're seeing a lot of lately when people are coming to see you? Any impact? I've been sort of going on about the things I've been noticing, but I'm wondering if there's anything else.
Yeah, I would say I feel like there's been a roller coaster of emotions with people, and with that has also bring in tides of those physical ailments as well. So I'm seeing a lot of what you're seeing as well. A lot of people complaining of digestive issues, maybe even some inflammation in their body too. They might just present in it with a feeling of aches, or they may actually visually see that their body is a little bit inflamed right now. So that's something that we're mitigating and working on tips to helping improve circulation with whatever stage they're in. Also, of course, like we just talked about, a lot of ergonomic issues. So
Right.
how the desk is set up and postural stuff. So there's a lot of ways we can just tweak their chair, moving the desk up and down. We don't even need to buy extra equipment like external keyboards and stuff. We can play around with a lot of stuff as is, especially if finances are at a minimum right now. So there's
Right.
no holds barred on that. There's a lot of education that we can provide to help with that. And then a lot of the typical neck pain and lower back pain, hip pain, mostly I would assume and extrapolate that it's a lot to do with the sitting postures and not enough up and moving. Or sometimes it's from the, like we just talked about, the extremes of a lot of sitting to let's now do a high intensity interval workout online. So just trying to get people to prep their bodies properly and give them the individualized movement patterns to seek the function that they're trying to get out of their body.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Well, this was so helpful. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking the time to do this today, because I'm seeing so much of this, and I'm excited to have this up on the Vancouver Anxiety website for my patients and anyone else who would find it helpful. And I think it's just a good idea to check in with your physio right now. You know, there are a lot of things. I think there are a lot of physical reasons why you can feel off, and it can make you feel more anxious, and also a lot of anxiety that can make you feel physically off. They're two sides of the same coin. So that's why it's wonderful to work with people like Larissa. But you have to take care of your body if you want to feel well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have to think of the body as all connected, and that's why it's so great to have people in the community that we can refer to, like Christine as well. So having that approach of that mind-body interrelationship and being able to know where we can work together to support each client's needs.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.